at the start of the year, we saw some of these issues dissipate, and now with certainly the war in Ukraine, and on top of that, more saber rattling between Washington and Beijing, how do you see things, and how do you see things given that you've just come back from the region? Asia.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, over the course of the past couple of years with the pandemic and some of these supply chain issues, UPS, I think, has really earned its name. Everybody thinks it's United Parcel Service. We think of it as United Problem Solvers. And we've kind of tackled each of the challenges in the supply chains for our customers with solutions. And so we see ongoing disruptions and continued lockdowns in certain markets as being the kind of obstacles that we need to figure out how to overcome for our customers, and we're doing it.
You're doing it, but are you seeing signs that maybe if tensions are building up again over Taiwan, between the U.S. and China, does it just add to more of the supply chain issues, the inflation issues as well that's happening now?
I think what it's going to do is, as there's disruptions in certain lanes, customers are going to look for other lanes of opportunity to keep the trade flowing. And because of UPS's multimodal network, we know ways to take things out of the air into the ground to keep trade moving. We're also working with governments when those disruptions occur in particular markets to figure out ways how to facilitate trade flows by other means. And some of the agreements, for example, that have been negotiated in the region are going to be really helpful to us to find those alternative trade lanes for keeping supply chains moving in spite of disruptions in certain markets or with certain connection points.
Laura, David here. I know you wear many hats, and obviously now with UPS, as we just mentioned there. What would your advice to corporates be right now who are looking at what's happened and perhaps what's about to happen and think we'll need to carry more inventory, our costs are going to go up logistically? What's the general guidance that perhaps from what you're seeing is perhaps merited at this point?
I think what we've learned from the past 2 years and what we're guiding now going forward is nearshoring and more regionalization of some of the supply chains is going to be critically important. Obviously, keeping additional inventory on hand may be needed for certain industry sectors, but we're advising companies that, it may be necessary to rethink the supply chains in ways that allow for diversification of sources of inputs, that allow for different methods for getting products to customers. And UPS is offering solutions that provide flexibility and agility in all those different options.
Laura, give us a sense, though, overall of how, of course, these geopolitical issues have played out in the rejigging of supply chains, but COVID's changed things as well. And, you can also take a look from an ESG perspective as well, that women have actually borne the brunt of this. This is something that you devoted yourself to. Give us a sense of what you've been witnessing.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you gave that a call out, because women have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, which is why we have refocused our efforts on helping women-owned businesses, particularly the small and medium-sized businesses, help them get back into the trading game. We've seen that SMBs are 98% of global trade flows. They represent 50% of the workforce of most countries. And that's why we're working with governments to make it easier for those smaller businesses and particularly women-owned businesses to get back in the trading game. We're doing that by advocating on, simpler policies for engaging in trade, providing tools to SMBs and particularly women-owned businesses to figure out how to get greater access to markets using digital tools, and advocating for more market access, particularly for SMBs. And here again, some of the regional trade agreements that have been negotiated have been powerful for facilitating those kind of trade flows, particularly for SMBs. Because when trade is simpler, more trade can happen. And SMBs, and particularly women-owned ones, can benefit from that simpler trade flows.
That's great, Laura. I wanted to ask just overall outlook. The peak season's coming up, obviously, with the holiday season. I wonder what your expectations for that. Are you seeing signs that demand can pick up in a big way, or when it comes to COVID restrictions in China, that's still complicating things?
The COVID restrictions and the lockdowns are definitely still complicating things, and we're not seeing, at least in the early stages, the demand like it's previously been. I think the IMF projections on the downturn in growth, particularly Asia Pacific region, are playing out right now, and what we're seeing in terms of the demand coming in from various retailers. And so we're trying to make sure that where we can accelerate trade, we're part of those solutions. Where we can, help companies be able to supply inventory to the markets where the demand is expected to be stronger than in others, we're trying to facilitate that as well. But there is definitely signs that there is some dampening of demand, and it's complicated by all these other issues that we're seeing in the market.